Like any server in your network, the ISA server isn't exempt from failure, so it stands to reason that you should back it up. So in this video, we're going to see how we can back up and restore our ISA server's configuration in case of a disaster. Although none of the configuration of ISA server is terribly difficult really, recreating all of the rules and so forth, that's where it becomes time consuming. So we'll want to back up a configuration to save us the hassle of having to redo all of that work. So in our ISA server management console under arrays, we're going to select our server here, LA ISA. And over here on the right hand side of our console in the task pane, we've got a couple of options here. We can export and import, or if you like, back up and restore our ISA server configuration. So we'll click on export or backup, and this starts up the export wizard. So we'll click next to begin. Now this is going to be a pretty short wizard here. We're asked if we want to export any confidential information, including user passwords, radius, shared secrets, and any other confidential stuff. And if we select this, we can enter in a password to encrypt that data. Now we can also export user permission settings as well, and that'll export any administrative roles that we might have delegated. So I'm going to select both of these here, and I will need to enter in a password. So let's type that in, and hopefully I got those correct. I did. And of course, we'd recommend that that's a nice strong password for a production environment. All right, now here we'll need to choose where we want our exported configuration file to be saved. So I'll click Browse, and I'm going to head off to my computer here, and on my C drive, I'm just going to create a new folder which I'll call Backup, and we'll jump into that folder, and we'll give our file a name of ISA. That's original. We'll click Open, and then we'll click Next. And we're almost done here, so we're going to export our configuration to our backup folder we just created to a file called isa.xml. Now I will point out what should probably be obvious to a lot of you listening, that backing up your configuration to the same drive that ISA's on is probably not the smartest idea in the world, because if this drive happens to die, well, I've just lost my configuration as well. So in the real world, outside of this lab environment, I'd put my backup on a network share or on another disk. So let's just click Finish, and our backup is going to begin, and our ISA server configuration will be exported to the XML file in the location that we specified. All right, well, the backup's done. It's pretty quick. We'll click OK. And if we go and open up my computer and go to our C drive, then the backup folder, there's our file. So let's double click on it. And in here, you can see all of the configuration of our ISA server, and you can go through this at your own leisure. Just be aware, though, that any of the confidential information in this file has been encrypted. All right, well, let's close this file now, and we'll go back to our ISA management console. And before we go and restore our configuration, let's just quickly go and take a look at one of our rules here, and we'll delete one of them, just to ensure that our restore is in fact working. That's always a good way of telling. So here we're going to choose either of these, it really doesn't matter. I'll choose to delete this allow internet access rule. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'll choose to delete it, and I'll confirm it by saying yes. And now we'll apply this change. Now, obviously it's a good idea to test things, but I certainly wouldn't be testing that type of rule on a live ISA server though, because you're probably likely to have a few people throwing things at you. All right, that rule has been deleted, so now let's go and select our ISA server again in the left-hand side of the console. And over on the right, we're going to choose the import or restore option. And of course, that's going to start up a wizard as expected. We'll click Next, and then we'll need to browse to where our backup is located. So we'll browse to that backup folder on our C drive. There's our XML file. We'll select that. We'll click Open, and then we'll click Next. And finally here, we can choose to either import the file, and that will just add any settings that are in our backup file to our current configuration. If we choose the overwrite option, obviously that's going to restore over the top of our existing configuration. So at this point, either of them is going to do the trick for me. I'll choose to import it, and we'll click Next. Now we can also choose to import server-specific information, which, as it suggests here, is going to include things like cache drives, VPN static address pools, and SSL certificates. Now we can also import the user permission settings, those being the delegated administrative roles, and we've already talked about that before. So let's just click both of these. We'll click Next, and then we'll need to enter in our password we used for this file. So we'll do that. We'll click Next, and then we'll click Finish, and Isoserver will begin importing the saved configuration. Now, just like our backup, this import is going to be pretty quick. It'll only take a few seconds really. It's done. So we'll click OK, and now we'll need to apply these changes. Again, that's a nice safety feature there because it does give you that safety blanket in case you didn't mean to restore over your current configuration. Alright, well, our changes have now been applied. Let's click OK, and if we go back to our firewall policy, we can see that our Allow Internet Access rule is back and it's live, it's in effect, so we know that our restore was successful. So make sure that you do have a regular backup of your Isoserver configuration. In fact, I'd recommend that you do a quick backup each time you plan on making changes. It only takes a few seconds, but it can save you a lot of trouble later on. So in this video, we've seen how to backup and restore the Isoserver configuration. There really isn't any excuse not to be backing up your configuration, since it's incredibly easy to do and it takes less than a minute of your life. So we hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'd like to thank you for watching.